education policy is a landmark change. Now, having said that, a policy could be good, but it can be bad if it is not implemented.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today it is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce you all to this very particular session where we are going to know more about the quality of higher education in India. My name is Harsh and I'm going to moderate this session for all of you, wherein I'm going to introduce you all about the event and perhaps the person who is going to interact and address all of us. First of all, I request you to kindly acknowledge and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest, Professor Kamlesh Mishra, who is here with us. I would like to request to all the person, those who are watching this session on YouTube, to kindly applaud in the comment section and welcome the presence of our guest. Professor Kamlesh Mishra currently holds the position of Vice Chancellor of Rishi Hood University, Sonipat. He was also the founding Vice Chancellor of Auro University, Surat, and also the Vice Chancellor of Ansal University, Gurgaon. Professor Mishra is a reputed strategist and innovative leader in the conceiving, organizing, and managing educational research organizations. Professor Mishra is a PhD in economics from Northeastern University, Boston, USA. He did his advanced training in financial management from Harvard Institute of International Development, Harvard University, US. And I believe his profile has so many things, so many glories, which I won't be able to explain in next few minutes. But I'm pretty sure during this conversation, we are going to learn a lot from him. So first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Harsh, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. It's our pleasure. So, sir, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is discussing the quality of higher education in India. Sir, we will go a little into the history. Sir, my first question to you is, what were the real condition of Indian education system before the British arrived?
I think if we have to trace the origin of education, and especially when we are going to talk about quality of education, I think we'll have to go much, much before the British system. You know, and it's better to trace it from the origin of Nalanda and Takshila, because those were probably the world's first universities that were established. And today, whatever we are trying to do or whatever we want to do actually existed at that time. So there were students from all over the world. There was a multidisciplinary approach to education. We did not have compartments like we have right now, that you're a science student or art students or commerce student. Everybody studied every subject. In fact, everybody had to study religion, everybody had to study philosophy, logic, astronomy, including defense studies. What happened after that, and that then led to the Gurukul system. Where Gurukul system basically was a system of residential schools, what you have today, because everybody had to stay in the school itself with the Guru and learn. So education was not only about subjects, but it was about life also. How do we lead a good life, and how we contribute to society in a way that education can help us make society better. I think if you look at the British system, the problem with the British system, which we continued for a long time, and still we have traces of that even today. The problem is that you have to understand why did the British want to set up universities in the first place, or higher education. British had only one desire. They wanted to make Babus who can manage the Raj. That was the whole purpose. That they needed people who were going to manage their empire in India. So they wanted people who were trained in English language, who were trained in the education system of the British. And that is what happened. Now, probably the British education system has gone through a lot of changes. But we still continue to go ahead with the same British education. I think if we would have gone back to and looked at how Nalanda and Takshila and all had education, probably we would have been in a better shape. So in terms of the type of education, the quality of education, I think we lost. We lost because of the British system. Yes, the good part was British did establish universities, but they established it not because we wanted it, it's because they wanted it.
Indeed, sir. I think you have covered all aspects related to it, and I think you have very beautifully explained about what you told us regarding Nalanda, Takshila, and what was the Gurukul education system. Sir, my next question to you is, what is your opinion on the new education Indian policy which recently introduced by the government of India? Do you think will it change the future of Indian education?
I personally feel that if you really trace the history of reforms in education in India, we have not had this kind of a reform. This is the first time where there is a policy which overhauls the whole education system. Right? All other policies were basically designed to solve some problems, but not overhaul the system. So in that way, I think the new education policy is a landmark policy for Indian education system. Also, I think the good part is that it has accepted a lot of things that were not being accepted before. For example, having a 4-year undergraduate degree was not accepted because the British had 3-year degrees, so we were with the 3-year. Now the new education policy allows universities to start a 4-year degree program. But besides that, even the curriculum, there's a lot of structural change that is coming. I think these compartments and silos are being broken down now. So as a student, you can choose what you want to study, what you want to excel in. But you will have to have a multidisciplinary approach. So, for example, you have to study sciences, you have to study mathematics, you have to study logic, you have to study all these type of things. But if you want to study a course in environmental science, you should be able to do that. And the system must permit you. I think that's the good part that in the education policy, that it allows the student to pick and choose and actually customize their degrees. So we can go into majors and we can go into minors. So I can major in business management and minor in computer science, which is possible now in the new education policy. So in that way, I think the new education policy is a landmark change. Now, having said that, a policy could be good, but it can be bad if it is not implemented the right way. So I feel that the how good the policy will actually end up being will depend to a large extent on how educational institutions are going to implement those policies. And there is a lot that educational institutions have to do. I think we also need to realize that our expectation from governments are always very high. We feel that the government should do everything. I think the role of the government is to make the conditions good for people to do things. but we have to do it. So, for example, I think the government needs to reduce the amount of regulation it has. Regulatory agencies need to be lesser. Overlapping should be removed. All these things that the government has to do. But I think the work of teaching and what is to be taught and how to assess, how to evaluate, how to conduct examination, these are not things that the government is supposed to do. These are things that the institutions need to do at their level. Also, there is a reform in the school system. So there's a big change coming there also. And there is a lot of emphasis on innovation. There is a lot of emphasis on application orientation in the courses. In a way, what we are trying to do is to move to a system where students don't need to memorize. We need to focus more on the understanding. That if you understand the subject, then you don't need to memorize, right? So I think those are some of the changes that will help the education sector in a big way. But we just need to see how fast we can bring about the change, because as I said, that this is going to be a structural shift completely, right? The kind of universities, the kind of affiliated colleges will not exist anymore. So it is possible that St. Stephen's can become either part of the university, or it can become a university by itself. It doesn't have to be affiliated, because the affiliation will go. Right? So I think there are a lot of good things in the education policy, and if they are implemented, we can bring about major change in the education policy, and also it will be consistent with world standards. For example, if a student wants to study postgraduate in United States, they require a 4-year undergraduate degree, whereas we have only 3 years. So a student has to anyway do certain number of credits, even though he may get admission in postgraduate, he still studies 1 year worth of credits at the undergraduate level. So I think we are going to come at par with international standards also.
Indeed, sir, you have very rightly mentioned that the new education policy was the landmark decision taken by the government of India, and indeed, but you have already mentioned that it all depends upon how the education institution are going to implement. It totally depends upon this. Sir, my next question to you is that, sir, do you think that in India IITs are overrated?
Let's because this is a question that is asked many times, not only about IITs but IIMs also. They are not overrated. Let's accept that they are some of our best institutions. It's not fair to say that all institutions in India are bad. No, we have a number of centers of excellence, and IITs are one of those institutions where I think it's easier to get admission in Harvard and MIT than to get admission in IIT. And that's a known fact, right? So Harvard or MIT may get about 40,000, 50,000 application max. IITs, how many students take the entrance exam? That's a lakhs.
Correct.
Right? So it's by that ratio, it's much more difficult for you to get into IIT than to get into Harvard and MIT. And that is the reason you find that Harvard and MIT receive a lot of students from India, and to the extent that they had to have a quota, because otherwise only Indian students would get into the program because of their scores are so high. So I think IITs are not overrated, neither are IIMs. But I also don't agree with the policy of creating more IITs and IIMs that are being done. That every state, every major city will have an IIM and will have an IIT. I don't think, I personally felt that the original IIMs and IITs should have stayed as IIMs and IITs. And we should have created new institutions with a different name. Because when you expand those institutions. So there were 4 IIMs in India. From that, we have gone to 15, 20. Right? Getting the same quality of teachers, getting the same quality of students is not going to be possible. Because IIMs and IITs were taking the cream of the country. Now they have to come down, because if you get in IIT Delhi, you will take it. But if you get in IIT Guwahati, are you willing to take it? Who is going to? So that's the problem. But these are good institutions, and I think we have a lot of institutions in India which are very, very good. And so it will not be fair to say that they are overrated. I think they have done a good job so far. Let's hope that the other new ones also can come up to that standard. That's all.
All right, sir. Again, I must say that you have made very clear, because this is the question which when I was collecting question for this session, I find it everywhere, and I think I should include because you are joining us today. And I think, sir, you have given a very beautiful answer that these education institutes are really very great institution of our country and creating a great impact all over the world. And we all know that every year around 15 to 20 lakh of aspirant appear in the exam, and only few thousands reach into the IITs.
Yeah.
So, sir, my next question to you is, why are many private higher education institutions in India unable to produce quality manpower?
See, although private education institutions have a history going back to 1970s, and in some cases even earlier, especially places like Surathkal, Manipal, all these started long back. It's not that they don't produce quality, but I think there are a limited number of those institutions which can produce that kind of quality as you would expect. And my understanding, one of the main reasons for that is that, very good students come from the middle class. That's the middle class of the society, is the one that gives the best students. And most of the middle class cannot afford the fees of a lot of private institutions. So they generally go into public institutions. That's where they try their luck. So a larger portion of students who would eventually become successful tend to go into public institutions. The ones that go to private institutions are who are in the upper segment of the society, upper middle class. When they have wealth, they have everything. They also can go abroad. So they are normally the students who will go into private sector. And so they are businessmen, industrialists, those kind of. So rightly, it is a question of money and the ability to pay. So it's not that private sector charge. I don't think that private sector charges more than what public. The costs are the same. So for example, if I pay 1,500 fees in Delhi University, it does not mean that cost is 1,500. The cost of a student going to Delhi University may be 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs per annum, maybe even more, right? If you take the cost. But much of it comes in form of subsidy, from taxpayers' money. So obviously, one who pays, he's paying less. So he feels that it is not expensive, which is not the case in private institutions, because private institutions are self-financing institutions. Their only source is the fees. And therefore, they will have to charge 10 to 15% higher than the cost in order to survive and grow. So I would say that it is true that a lot of students who are very successful, become very good, are still going to the public system. But it is changing. It is changing drastically, because a lot of private universities are now moving in that direction, and they're doing really, really very, very well.
Indeed, sir. Again, it was really a very quite insightful answer from your side. Sir, I think I must say that it's a kind of privilege that today we got to hear all those things from you. Sir, my next question to you is what changes? Sir, first, the question is what is that one thing which makes you sad regarding the Indian education system?
I personally feel as a teacher, uh, it's the students actually. Uh, how do we bring about a transformation in the life of the student? And that can be done by teachers. And I always feel that people who come into teaching as a profession, and many times I even don't want to call it a profession because it becomes so. Anybody who wants to be a teacher first, they should want to be a teacher. Many people become teachers by default, right? Because they may not be successful elsewhere, so they feel, chalo hum padha lete hain, right? So when you have good teachers, and that respect should not be demanded by the teachers. It should be earned by the teachers. Because when that respect develops between the students and the teachers, then there is, otherwise you know the standard system, एक दो सवाल पूछो तो बोलते हैं बैठ जाओ, बहुत ज़्यादा बोलते हैं, right? I think the freedom to ask questions, the curiosity, I think it's important to let the child and the student grow. You know, it is the curiosity of the child that should exist. If a child looks at a light, he wants to touch that light and he wants to find out what that light is. Unless we create that kind of a system where we push the students towards self-discovery, they have a desire to know more about themselves, their inner self. That's where the hidden potential is. So transformation is what is the most important thing. If as teachers we cannot bring about a transformation, then we have actually failed in our responsibility. So everyone, if there is one successful student, everybody says that he was my student. But they should also say that there are so many unsuccessful ones also which are their students. Right? So when you have that desire to bring transformation, you will make a lot of successful stories. Because you need to hold hands. The teacher is a person who walks with you holding your hand and at the right times just lets you go to walk on your own. So I think that's the most important thing for education as far as because when you work with them to bring about a transformation, you also talk to them about life. What is life? And you share experiences of your life also. You share your good experiences and you share your bad experiences also. Please remember that today in India, we don't have a joint family system. So culturally, things that used to come in a joint family system now have to be done by the teachers. Right? And that's the most important part for me, for my students' point of view, that what have we actually made out of them? And I don't feel that people can say that it's not possible. It is very, very much possible to bring about magic in the life of students. And they will do it willingly.
Again, sir, it was really a very wonderful answer from your side, and I'm quite impressed after listening to this answer. Actually, you told the main reason. I think that is quite relatable, and I think that the viewers, those who are watching this session, of course, they are going to learn many things from it. And I don't, I only not think, but I do strongly believe, sir. Sir, my next question to you is: can we expect to build a university like of Harvard in India after implementing these all new education policies?
Okay. I think, Harsh, one of the things that we need to understand, and there is a lot of talk in India, and people do a lot of news talking that we need to create world-class universities, and we will create this class universities. I think what is important for us to understand that world-class universities are not created. Universities become world-class. So today, when somebody says Harvard is a world-class university, Harvard never had in its objective to become a world-class university. In fact, if you take the top 10 universities and call them as world-class, none of them had in their objective that they wanted to become a world-class university. They only did the right things. Right? And by doing those right things, everybody started calling them as world-class universities. First, they were just universities, then they became good universities, then they became great universities. And each of these steps to reaching to become world-class has taken more than 50, 60 years at each of these stages. So it's not a one-day process. We cannot create world-class universities in 5 years or 10 years. It's not possible at all. Yes, we know what does it take or what have these universities done that has made them world-class. I think in India, the problem is that universities at some point stopped creating knowledge. One of the main objectives of universities is to create new knowledge. I think we lost that. And we actually started recycling existing knowledge. So when faculty members indulge in cutting-edge research, that is how knowledge is created. And then that knowledge needs to be transferred. So I think we will have to go back to that kind of a system. Unfortunately, our university research is almost dead. Whatever research is being done by individuals. And maybe they are great teachers. I still say that 20% of the teachers in the public system, it is on their shoulders that the university system is working. And nobody knows them. And they are not in politics. They are not there in unions. They are nowhere. They are doing their job. And they are doing it brilliantly. They will never become vice chancellors. They will never become deans. And they don't care about it also. So we need great teachers, great students, great environment, great research, and an open system. We still have closed systems. We need systems to be more open. I think this is what it takes. One other element that is important in this is how is the relationship between universities and industry. So if you look at the Western model, industry research is conducted in the universities. Universities conduct research. They create patents. Those patents are purchased by the industry and converted into commercial projects. In our country, that is not happening. In our country, universities and industries don't work together. Only reason that we are failing to get companies to sponsor projects is because companies don't have faith in the system. And it will take some time for us to reach that point. So if we want to build universities, let's do a great job. Become good universities, then become great universities, then maybe we'll become world-class universities. At this point, I feel that I don't see a world-class university for the next 50 to 75 years. Because those conditions are not there yet. The conditions for creating those kind of universities have to exist, which we don't have yet.
Very meaningful, sir. Sir, I must say that there's a lot to learn from you, but today we are short of time and I don't want to take you much time. So moving to my last question of this session, actually, as you have raised the point of research, sir, my next question to you is, what changes can actually improve the quality of research in higher education institutes in India?
I think, there are two things. One is universities that are existing and universities that are coming up, new universities. I think it's much easier to build a culture of research in new universities because they are just starting and they don't have a culture set in yet. So you need to identify people who are good researchers and bring them on board. And create that culture of research and publication and create some incentives for people to do that. Existing systems, especially public systems, there is no interest. Because when I talked to you at the beginning, I said that one should come into teaching only because they love doing it. It is not a job. And that's the reason I said that it's not a profession. It's a lifestyle. So when you decide to come into teaching, don't come for money, don't come for a job. That's a lifestyle that you want to lead, right? Where you can make that difference. When people who are committed to academics as a lifestyle, then research becomes part of academic. Writing books, research papers, research grants, all these things are there that will happen. I feel that private universities are probably in a better situation to bring about a change in the research culture. One of the stumbling blocks has always been that the government has been very reluctant, although as a policy they will not tell you, but they're very reluctant to give research funds to private universities because they feel that they should give it only to public universities, which are funded universities. But I think this new education policy is bringing about a change in that also. That private universities will be treated at par with public universities as far as the funding for research projects is concerned. So I think getting a lot of these kind of research projects and study of the local areas will bring a lot of money. And that's how new knowledge will get created. I don't think that we can do, or we can even move towards that becoming a good university if we leave research aside. Research is an essential part of higher education system.
Indeed, sir. It was really a very great message from your side. I was listening you very carefully. You told us that if you really want to join the education sector, then you must have the passion for that. If you are only thinking about the money or about the finance, you can't create the difference. And I think it was really a great message. On this note, sir, I would like to wrap up this session. It was a healthy discussion with you over the topic, sir. Thank you so much for joining and giving your important time.
Thank you, Harsh, and you and your work that you're doing, more things.
Thank you so much, sir. It really means a lot for us. Thank you so much. We look forward to conduct more sessions with you in future.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside, I'm alone.